Pre-Giuseppe Farina, the Formula One didn't even exist. Back in 1901, they called it Grand Prix racing, where wealthy enthusiasts raced primitive cars on public roads. The first real Formula One race happened in Turin in 1946, when they finally created rules for these machines. From 180 miles per hour death traps with no safety features, to cars that accelerate faster than fighter jets. This is how a European gentleman's hobby became the most technologically advanced sport on the planet. So how did we get from gentlemen racing on public roads to the global spectacle of modern Formula One? Let's go back to the beginning. In 1901, wealthy European aristocrats gathered in France for what they called a Grand Prix, literally a grand prize worth 45,000 francs. These were not professional drivers, they were adventure-seeking businessmen and nobility who raced their massive, primitive machines on unpaved public roads at insane speeds. No seatbelts, no helmets, no safety barriers, just goggles, leather caps and pure courage. When these cars crashed, they often burst into flames. Drivers were regularly thrown from their vehicles at 80 miles per hour. The mortality rate wasn't just high, it was expected. In 1906, Ferencz won the first formally organised Grand Prix in a Renault that featured mechanical innovation, but with safety standards that would horrify modern viewers. His average speed, a then blistering 63 miles per hour, barely highway speed today, but enough to make him a winner. By the 1920s, legends emerged. Tazio Nuvolari, known as the Flying Mantuan, would throw his Alfa Romeo sideways around corners in a controlled slide that looks insane even by today's standards. But his rival Rudolf Caracciola dominated in Mercedes machinery, sometimes racing for over 7 hours straight without a co-driver. Between 1925 and 1939, two championship series emerged: the World Manufacturers' Championship and later the European Drivers' Championship. Cars now featured supercharged engines producing over 600 horsepower in machines weighing less than modern family sedans, with drum brakes that would barely stop a bicycle. Then World War II hit, racing stopped, factories built tanks instead of race cars, and many tracks were destroyed. But from the ashes of war came organisation. In 1946, at the Turin Grand Prix, the term Formula One was officially used for the first time. This formula referred to a set of rules cars must follow, like engine size, weight, and dimensions. It was the first standardisation of what had been a chaotic sport. For the next 3 years, non-championship Formula One races were held across Europe. The cars remained front-engined beasts with minimal safety features, but now there were rules. Teams emerged, professionalism grew. The stage was set for something bigger, something global. In 1950, everything changed. May 13th, 1950. At Silverstone Circuit in England, 21 drivers lined up for the first ever Formula One World Championship race. King George VI was in attendance, the only time a reigning British monarch has attended a Grand Prix. This was the birth of a global sporting institution. Cars that still resembled pre-war machines, cigar-shaped bodies with massive front-mounted engines. Drivers wore leather helmets offering minimal protection, their faces exposed to flying debris and oil. They sat upright behind the engine, essentially positioned to be the first thing hit in a crash. Technically, these cars ran under what was called the Formula One specification, either supercharged 1.5-litre engines or naturally aspirated 4.5-litre beasts. Teams could choose their approach, but the Italian manufacturers had perfected supercharging before the war. That's why Alfa Romeo dominated that first season. The legendary 158 Alfetta was created before World War II and improved after the war. It had a supercharged straight-8 engine that produced about 350 horsepower. By today's standards, that sounds modest, but in a car weighing just 1,500 pounds with skinny tyres and drum brakes, it was a handful. The Italian Giuseppe Farina claimed the first championship in 1950, but the Alfa Romeo team had an ace up their sleeve, an Argentine driver named Juan Manuel Fangio. In 1951, Fangio secured his first of 5 world championships, beginning one of the most remarkable careers in sporting history. By 1952, Alfa Romeo withdrew, allowing Ferrari to rise to prominence. Alberto Ascari dominated in the Ferrari 500, winning back-to-back championships in 1952 and 1953. This period cemented Italian engineering dominance, but a German giant was about to return. Mercedes-Benz stormed back into racing in 1954 with their revolutionary W196. Notice the sleek body and fuel injection system. These technologies come from aircraft development. Fangio, showing his remarkable adaptability, switched from Maserati to Mercedes mid-season and still won the championship. The most impressive part of Fangio's success isn't just his 5 titles, but he won them with 4 different teams: Alfa Romeo, Ferrari, Mercedes, and Maserati. This would be like a modern driver winning with Mercedes, then Ferrari, then Red Bull, then McLaren. A scenario that is unimaginable today. Technical innovations were appearing too. Jaguar had introduced disc brakes in sports car racing, and they slowly entered Formula One, dramatically improving stopping power. But the basic layout remained unchanged: engine in front, driver behind, danger everywhere. These cars were still deadly weapons. In 1955, during the Le Mans 24 Hours, not a Formula One race but with similar Mercedes cars, a tragic disaster struck. Pierre Levesque's Mercedes crashed into the crowd, killing him and 83 spectators. The accident led to Mercedes withdrawing from motorsport entirely. By 1957, Fangio secured his 5th and final championship with Maserati. His record would stand for nearly 50 years, and his win rate, 24 victories from 51 starts, remains unmatched. When Fangio retired in 1958, a vacuum was created at the top of Formula One. But a revolution was brewing. British engineering was about to turn Formula One design philosophy upside down, literally. The engine was about to move from the front to the back. But what if everything we thought we knew about racing car design was wrong? What if the engine didn't belong in front of the driver at all? Workshops across Britain were buzzing with a big question. A group of creative engineers, nicknamed garagistes by Enzo Ferrari, was ready to shake up Formula One. They aimed to shift the sport's focus from Italy to Britain. 1958 brought 2 major developments. First, the Constructors' Championship was introduced, giving teams official recognition alongside drivers. The British Vanwall team claimed this inaugural title, with Sterling Moss and Tony Brooks sharing driving duties. But the bigger revolution was brewing at Cooper Car Company, a small British outfit run by Charles and John Cooper. Cooper chose to place its engine behind the driver, while Ferrari and Maserati focused on building beautiful front-engined cars. This was a complete rethinking of race car physics. With the engine positioned behind the driver, the distribution of weight improved significantly. The cars were more balanced in corners, had better traction out of turns, and could be built smaller and lighter. In 1959, Australian driver Jack Brabham demonstrated that the concept was real. He won Cooper's first world championship. The race footage highlights the different handling of these cars. Front-engine cars slid through corners with noticeable body roll. In contrast, the Cooper cars appeared planted and nimble. Brabham repeated his success in 1960, and by 1961, even Ferrari had admitted defeat, abandoning their front-engine layout. It was one of the most rapid technical revolutions in sporting history. Within 3 years, an approach that had dominated for decades was obsolete. But the British innovation was just getting started. In 1962, another British team, Lotus, led by the brilliant Colin Chapman, introduced the monocoque chassis with their Lotus 25. Previous F1 cars used a tubular frame design, essentially a scaffold to which components were attached. Chapman's monocoque was a single-piece chassis that was lighter, stiffer, and stronger. This architectural design seems familiar. That's because every modern F1 car uses this concept. It was the beginning of viewing the car as a complete system rather than a collection of parts. The monocoque Lotus gave Jim Clark, perhaps the most naturally gifted driver ever to race in F1, the perfect platform to showcase his talent. Clark's smoothness is apparent. While other drivers wrestled their cars, Clark made driving look effortless, as if the car was an extension of his body. In 1963, Clark dominated in the Lotus 25, winning 7 of 10 races. Notice how low he sits in the car now compared to the past. The monocoque design lets drivers sit lower, which drops the centre of gravity even more. By 1964, Formula One's global reach expanded when Honda entered as an engine supplier, the first Japanese manufacturer to join the championship. Their technical approach was innovative, a V12 engine that could rev higher than its European counterparts. This era saw a complete transformation in car design. The rear engine revolution changed everything: weight distribution, aerodynamics, cooling systems, and driver positioning. Front-engined cars went from cutting-edge to museum pieces in less than 5 years. But there was a dark side to this technological arms race. As cars got faster, safety didn't keep pace. In 1968, Jim Clark, widely considered unbeatable and perhaps the safest pair of hands in racing, was killed in a Formula 2 race at Hockenheim. His death sent shockwaves through the sport. If Jim Clark could die at the wheel, anyone could. The British Revolution changed Formula One. It moved power away from Italian giants and into the hands of British specialists. But as engine power continued to increase and aerodynamic experimentation began, the sport was entering its most dangerous era. As the 60s progressed, Formula One faced dual revolutions, one in technology and another in business. The sport was about to get faster, more dangerous and significantly richer. In 1966, new regulations introduced a 3-litre engine formula, replacing the previous 1.5-litre engines. This meant more power, a lot more. Overnight, horsepower jumped from around 220 to over 400. Australia's Jack Brabham, now running his own team, became the only driver in F1 history to win a championship in a car bearing his name. But these stronger cars showed a big problem in the sport. Safety was almost non-existent. The racetracks looked just like they did in the past. There were no barriers, no runoff areas, and sometimes trees lined the circuits. Jackie Stewart recalled lying in a hut with a broken arm, while fuel dripped on him after a crash at Spa-Francorchamps, describing the primitive medical facilities. In 1968, something new appeared on the cars: wings. Borrowed from aircraft design, these aerodynamic elements pushed the cars into the ground, creating downforce that improved grip. Lotus pioneered the concept, but soon every team was experimenting with often dangerous wing designs mounted on spindly struts. A young Scot named Jackie Stewart emerged as the era's dominant driver. Stewart combined blinding speed with mechanical sympathy and methodical preparation. His Tyrrell Ford became the car to beat between 1969 and 1971, securing him 3 world championships. But Stewart's most important battle was off the track. After witnessing numerous friends die, including Jim Clark, he began a safety crusade that made him deeply unpopular with track owners and some traditionalists. He demanded better barriers, fire crews, medical facilities, and smooth track surfaces. "If I have any legacy to leave Formula One," Stewart said, "it's that drivers today can risk their lives, but not their lives and limbs." Stewart, unlike past drivers, wears a full-face helmet and a custom fireproof suit. He helped create this safety gear. Meanwhile, another revolution was brewing. Look at these cars from the early 1970s. Notice the sponsorship. The national racing colours are gone. No more Italian red, British green, or French blue. These colours had defined teams for decades. The logos of cigarette companies, airlines and oil firms replaced them. Leading this commercial transformation was Bernie Ecklestone, a former driver and team owner who saw Formula One's untapped business potential. In 1974, Ecklestone helped create the Formula One Constructors Association. This group started negotiating TV rights together, instead of each race making separate deals. Ecclestone's vision was simple, but revolutionary: package Formula One as a global television product. His famous quote, "I sell white wall space," referred to his genius for selling advertising on cars that would be seen by millions of viewers worldwide. By 1976, Formula One was a global show. It featured a fierce rivalry: the methodical Austrian Niki Lauda in his Ferrari and the charming British playboy James Hunt in his McLaren. Their season-long battle captivated audiences worldwide. Then came August 1st, 1976, the German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring, a 14-mile monster track nicknamed the Green Hell. Despite Lauda leading efforts to boycott the dangerous circuit, the race went ahead in wet conditions. Lauda's Ferrari crashed and burst into flames. The footage is too graphic to show in full, but Lauda was trapped in the inferno for nearly a minute. He suffered catastrophic burns, inhaled toxic gases, and was given last rites in the hospital. But what happened next shocked everyone. Just 42 days later, Lauda was back racing. He was still bleeding from skin grafts and could barely blink. Hunt won the 1976 championship by 1 point in a rainy Japanese finale. But Lauda's comeback marked a time when driver bravery meant more than just speed. It was about confronting life and death. As the 1970s progressed, 2 technological innovations were being developed that would transform the sport yet again. One was ground effect aerodynamics and the second, turbocharging. Formula One was about to get faster, much faster. The closing years of the 1970s brought about 2 innovations so powerful they would make previous Formula One cars look like toys. The first came from the mind of Colin Chapman, the innovative genius behind Lotus. In 1978, Lotus unveiled its revolutionary 79 model, nicknamed Black Beauty, for its elegant John Player special livery. But its real beauty was underneath. The car seems glued to the track in corners. Chapman's brilliance was in reshaping the underside of the car to create a vacuum. The side pods were designed as inverted wings with sliding skirts that sealed the gap to the track. As the car moved forward, air accelerated under these channels, creating suction that pulled the car onto the asphalt. The results were astonishing. Cornering speeds were 30% higher. American Mario Andretti, who won the 1978 championship in the Lotus 79, described it perfectly. "It's like the car's on rails." But while Lotus was revolutionizing aerodynamics, Renault was pursuing a different path: turbocharging. In 1977, they introduced a 1.5-litre turbocharged engine to serve as an alternative to the standard 3.0-litre naturally aspirated engines. Initially, their car was mocked as the yellow teapot because it frequently broke down with puffs of smoke. But Renault was playing the long game. By 1979, the turbo reliability improved and Renault scored their first victory at the French Grand Prix. The power advantage was so significant that by 1982, all major teams were developing turbo engines. The battle between turbocharged and naturally aspirated engines created fascinating tactical races. Turbos with more power but worse fuel consumption versus nimbler, more reliable naturally aspirated cars. Off-track, Formula One's governance was also transforming. Bernie Ecklestone, representing the teams, negotiated with the FIA, Formula One's governing body, and race organisers to create the first Concorde Agreement in 1981. This secret document, named for the FIA headquarters at Place de la Concorde in Paris, outlined how to split television revenues and set rules. It built the business structure that still supports Formula One today. The sport had completed its transition from gentleman's pastime to a global entertainment business. But these technological advances came at a devastating cost. Ground effects cars were physically punishing to drive. The extreme downforce created such high G-forces that drivers reported blurred vision and difficulty breathing in corners. When the aerodynamic seal broke, the cars became instantly uncontrollable. No one epitomised the danger and spectacle of this era better than Canadian Gilles Villeneuve, a Ferrari driver whose bravery bordered on recklessness. His car control was supernatural. But on May 8, 1982, during qualifying for the Belgian Grand Prix, Villeneuve's Ferrari struck another car and was launched airborne. The impact was catastrophic. Villeneuve was thrown from the cockpit and died that evening, another reminder of how dangerous the sport remained. Just 2 weeks later, as if to emphasise the point, Villeneuve's teammate Didier Pironi suffered career-ending leg injuries in a similar accident. The ground effect era had pushed physics and human bodies beyond their limits. Nelson Piquet, driving for Brabham, now owned by Bernie Ecklestone, won the 1981 and 1983 championships, becoming the standard-bearer for this new generation. But it was the cars, not the drivers, that defined this period. Machines so powerful and physically demanding that they were beginning to exceed human capabilities. By 1983, turbo engines were producing over 800 horsepower in race trim, but that was just the beginning. With qualifying specific engines and fuel, the next era would push power outputs to levels that remain unmatched even today. The early turbo years focused on experimentation. Then came an arms race. This led to the most powerful Formula One cars ever built. By 1984, two names dominated: McLaren as a team and Porsche as their engine partner, badged as TAG. Their driver lineup was equally formidable. The comeback king Niki Lauda, paired with the methodical Frenchman Alain Prost, nicknamed the Professor for his calculating approach. The 1984 championship came down to half a point, the closest margin in F1 history, with Lauda edging Prost despite winning fewer races. Lauda's experience handling turbo lag was way better compared to Prost's smoother style. But what is a turbo lag? It's the delay between pressing the accelerator and the turbocharger delivering power. These cars were brutal to drive. When the boost kicked in, it was like a switch flipping from 400 to 800 horsepower instantly. By 1986, the power peaked. In qualifying trim, with special engines designed to last only a few laps, these 1.5-litre turbo monsters produced over 1,300 horsepower, more power per litre than any modern hypercar. Engines smaller than what you'd find in a Honda Civic, producing more power than a Bugatti. BMW's qualifying engine reportedly hit 1,400 horsepower, a record that stands to this day, 40 years later. Fuel strategy became as important as driving skill. These turbo engines were thirsty, consuming fuel at a rate that would empty their tanks in just 15 minutes at full power. Races turned into tests of fuel management. Drivers adjusted boost levels, often with simple cockpit controls. By 1987, the FIA began restricting turbo power, first with boost limits, then with fuel restrictions. The writing indicated that officials would ban turbos after the 1988 season. But before they disappeared, one final chapter remained to be written. McLaren switched from TAG Porsche to Honda engines and hired a young Brazilian named Ayrton Senna to partner Alain Prost. The result was the most dominant car in Formula One history, the McLaren MP44. Its technical superiority was absolute. McLaren won 15 of the 16 races in 1988. More significantly, the Senna-Prost rivalry was born, a battle that would define Formula One for years to come. Senna's mystical, almost religious approach to driving contrasted with Prost's calculated precision. But the 1988 Italian Grand Prix at Monza was unique for McLaren. It was the only race they didn't win. Senna crashed while leading, which let Ferrari's Gerhard Berger take the victory. This win came just weeks after Enzo Ferrari's death, creating a powerful moment in sports history. As 1988 ended, so did the turbo era. Never again would Formula One cars produce such raw power. The sport was ready to enter the electronic age. Soon, computers would replace raw horsepower as the key to performance. With the turbo era's explosive power consigned to history, Formula One reset to 3.5-litre naturally aspirated engines for 1989. But instead of slowing down, the sport just changed its focus. It moved from raw horsepower to advanced electronics. This new era would be defined not by mechanical genius, but by digital innovation. Computers were about to transform Formula One into the most technologically advanced sport on the planet. The 1989 season continued the McLaren-Honda dominance, but with a dramatic twist. The Senna-Prost relationship had sunk from respectful competition to outright hostility. At the Japanese Grand Prix, Senna made a desperate lunge, Prost turned in, and their cars tangled at the chicane. This collision ultimately gave Prost a championship on a technicality, as Senna was disqualified after rejoining the track. A year later at the same track, Senna enacted his revenge with a deliberate first corner collision that secured his second title. Their rivalry went beyond sports. It turned into a clash of ideas and personalities. While this human drama played out, a technological breakthrough was underway. Williams, with technical director Patrick Head and aerodynamicist Adrian Newey, was pioneering electronic driver aids. Their 1991 car had a semi-automatic gearbox. This let drivers change gears without taking their hands off the steering wheel. It was standard in F1 later, but it was revolutionary back then. By 1992, Williams unveiled the FW14B, perhaps the most technologically advanced racing car ever built. Its active suspension used hydraulics and computers. This setup automatically adjusted the car's ride height for each corner. The car also featured traction control, preventing wheel spin, launch control for perfect starts, and anti-lock brakes. The computers were now handling tasks previously requiring extraordinary skill. Mansell dominated the 1992 season in this technological marvel, securing the championship with a then record 9 wins. The next year, Alain Prost returned from retirement to join Williams. He won his 4th title in a more advanced car. These driver aids changed the nature of Formula One skill. Computers could now prevent mistakes, optimize traction, and maintain perfect car balance. Teams with the best programming were gaining seconds per lap over competitors. Telemetry advanced too, with cars transmitting real-time data to pit walls. Engineers could now analyze every aspect of the car's performance and the driver's inputs. The sport was becoming a battle of computational power as much as driving skill. For traditionalists, these electronic aids represented a threat to the sport's essence. The human element was being diminished. If computers prevented driver errors, what separated the good from the great? The FIA seemed to agree. As the 1993 season progressed, they announced a ban on most electronic driver aids for 1994. The cars would become more mechanical again, more challenging to drive, putting emphasis back on driver skill. But what happens when technology begins to overshadow human skill? Formula One was about to experience its most painful reset and witness the emergence of its most dominant champion. The 1994 season began with the most dramatic technical reset in Formula One history. Traction control, active suspension, ABS, and launch control were banned. Cars that had been developed as integrated electronic systems now had to function as purely mechanical machines. The drivers, used to electronic safety nets, suddenly faced raw, unfiltered power. It was like taking away power steering and ABS from a modern car and expecting drivers to perform at the same level. The reset separated those who relied on electronic aids from those with raw talent. One driver immediately adapted better than anyone else, a young German named Michael Schumacher in his Benetton. His car control was extraordinary, his ability to handle the newly challenging machines unmatched. But some people suspected that not all teams had taken out their electronic aids, and Schumacher's Benetton faced the most attention. Meanwhile, Ayrton Senna had moved to Williams, expecting to dominate with the team that had won the previous 2 championships. But he found himself struggling with an unstable car stripped of the electronic systems it had been designed around. Then came the darkest weekend in modern Formula One, the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix at Imola. On Friday, Rubens Barrichello was injured in a horrific crash. On Saturday, qualifying claimed the life of Austrian driver Roland Ratzenberger. And on Sunday, May 1st, Ayrton Senna, recognised by many as the greatest driver of his generation, crashed at the Tamburello corner. This was the moment that changed Formula One forever. The sport's biggest star died immediately after sustaining head injuries. The shock was global. Brazil declared 3 days of national mourning. In the aftermath, safety became the priority. Tracks evolved, gravel traps expanded, tyre barriers improved, and cockpit protection enhanced. The FIA, under Max Mosley, launched a safety crusade that continues to this day. Schumacher went on to win the 1994 championship after a controversial collision with Damon Hill in the final race. He achieved success again in 1995. He became Senna's successor and the sport's top driver. Then Schumacher made a decision that seemed incomprehensible. He left the championship-winning Benetton team to join Ferrari, a proud team that had become a midfield struggler. Ferrari hadn't won a drivers' championship since 1979. In 1996, Schumacher showcased his skills with a weaker Ferrari. His wet weather win in Spain proved it. He was over 2 seconds faster than the competition, highlighting his incredible talent. But championships wouldn't come immediately. From 1997 to 1999, Williams and McLaren battled for supremacy. Jacques Villeneuve won in 1997. This followed another controversial collision with Schumacher. As a result, Schumacher was disqualified from the championship for his actions. Mika Häkkinen then emerged as Schumacher's primary rival, winning back-to-back titles for McLaren in 1998 and 1999. The 1998 season introduced another significant change: narrower cars and grooved tyres designed to reduce cornering speeds. The car's appearance changed, from wide, slick-shod machines to narrower vehicles with visibly grooved tyres that reduced grip. Through this period, Schumacher methodically built Ferrari into a contender. He brought key personnel with him: technical director Ross Brawn and designer Rory Byrne from Benetton. Jean Todt, the team principal, completed what would become known as Ferrari's Dream Team. While not winning championships, Schumacher's performances, including a broken leg injury in 1999, showed his commitment to the Ferrari project. As the millennium neared, a new era of dominance was ready to begin. The patient rebuilding of Ferrari was about to pay off in the most dominant period any Formula One team has ever experienced. The 2000 season began with Michael Schumacher finally achieving what he'd been hired to do, bringing the Drivers' Championship back to Ferrari after a 21-year drought. His season-long fight with Mika Häkkinen's McLaren ended in a smart race at the Japanese Grand Prix. There, Ross Brawn's clever 3-stop strategy won the title. This was just the beginning. What followed was unprecedented domination. The Ferrari F2002 is considered the greatest Formula One car ever built. Its perfect balance, reliability, and performance advantage meant Schumacher could often win races while appearing to drive well within himself. In terms of performance, it was in a league of its own compared to its competitors. The statistics from this period are mind-blowing. From 2000 to 2004, Ferrari won 5 consecutive drivers' and constructors' championships. In 2002, Schumacher finished on the podium in all 17 races, winning 11. By the 2002 French Grand Prix, just past the season's midpoint, he had already secured the championship. Technical innovations drove this success. Ferrari created the seamless shift gearbox. This design cuts out the tiny power loss that happens during gear changes. While this might sound minor, it improved both acceleration and stability, as the car never lost traction during shifts. The team's wind tunnel development under Rory Byrne created aerodynamic advantages that competitors couldn't match. Every detail was optimized. The shaped titanium skid blocks made sparks to distract rivals from real innovations. Bridgestone also perfected tyre usage by designing compounds just for Ferrari's cars. The dominance was so complete that the FIA repeatedly changed rules to slow Ferrari down. Qualifying formats were altered, point systems revised, and technical regulations adjusted, all attempting to create closer competition. It was essentially Ferrari versus the world. The 2004 season represented the peak of this dominance, with Schumacher winning 13 of 18 races in the F2004. This car set lap records that stood for over 15 years at some circuits, a testament to its extraordinary performance. By the end of 2004, Schumacher had shattered virtually every Formula One record: 7 world championships, surpassing Fangio's 5. 83 race wins, far eclipsing Alain Prost's previous record of 51, and 13 wins in a season, a record that would stand until 2013. No team had ever dominated Formula One so completely for so long. Ferrari's Dream Team had created a juggernaut that seemed unstoppable, but Formula One abhors dominance. In 2005, the regulations changed again. They aimed to limit Ferrari's advantages. The sport was on the verge of entering an era where manufacturers would invest massive resources to challenge Ferrari's top spot. The 2005 season marked the end of Ferrari's dominance through a simple but effective rule change. Tyres now had to last an entire race. This targeted Ferrari and their tyre supplier Bridgestone directly, while benefiting Michelin teams. Renault, led by flamboyant team boss Flavio Briatore, emerged as the new powerhouse. And Fernando Alonso, a young Spanish driver, was just 24 years old when he dethroned Schumacher. He became the youngest champion in F1 history at that time. In 2006, another major change arrived, with V8 2.4-litre engines replacing the V10s. The higher-pitched scream of these engines revving to an incredible 19,000 RPM. Alonso won his second title in a row. This confirmed he was Schumacher's successor since the German had retired, though only for a while. Then came 2007, and one of F1's biggest scandals. McLaren was found in possession of a 780-page Ferrari technical document. The Spygate scandal resulted in McLaren being disqualified from the Constructors' Championship and fined $100 million, the largest sporting fine in history. It demonstrated how valuable technical information had become in this engineering-focused sport. On track, a rookie named Lewis Hamilton nearly won the championship in his first season, but McLaren lost to Ferrari's Kimi Räikkönen by just 1 point. The 2008 season produced perhaps the most dramatic championship conclusion in F1 history. At the final corner of the final lap of the final race in Brazil, Hamilton overtook Toyota's Timo Glock to win the championship by a single point from Ferrari's Felipe Massa. Massa's family was already celebrating when Hamilton made the crucial pass, a moment of pure sporting drama. In 2009, a perfect sporting tale unfolded. Honda withdrew from F1 due to the global financial crisis, selling their team for £1 to team principal Ross Brawn. Renamed Brawn GP, they discovered a regulatory loophole allowing for a double diffuser that gave massive aerodynamic advantage, and they won both championships against all odds. Jenson Button took the driver's title, a remarkable comeback story in F1 history. But a new force was emerging. Red Bull Racing, under technical director Adrian Newey, the genius behind winning Williams and McLaren cars, young German Sebastian Vettel took the wheel. Together they started a time of aerodynamic dominance. From 2010 to 2013, Red Bull won 4 consecutive drivers' and constructors' championships. Their mastery of aerodynamics, particularly the blown diffuser concept of routing exhaust gases to generate downforce, created cars with phenomenal cornering ability, especially in high-speed corners. Their stability was insane. During this period, F1 introduced 2 significant overtaking aids. Kinetic Energy Recovery System was introduced in 2009. It captured braking energy to give a power boost. Then, in 2011, the Drag Reduction System, DRS, was introduced. This system allowed drivers to open a flap on their rear wing, which helped to improve their straight-line speed when following another car closely. These technologies mark F1's first steps to tackle 2 big issues: the challenge of overtaking in modern aerodynamic cars and the sport's impact on the environment. They would be crucial building blocks for what came next. In 2014, Formula One would make its boldest technological leap yet, one that would create the most dominant team in the sport's history and push its greatest driver to unprecedented heights. The F1 introduced hybrid power units that would transform both performance and efficiency. These were not simple engines anymore, but complex power systems combining a 1.6-litre V6 turbo engine with 2 energy recovery systems. One harvested energy from braking, and the other, more revolutionary component, captured heat energy from the turbo itself. Together, they delivered an electrical boost of 160 horsepower on top of the combustion engine's output. Each manufacturer had to combine a turbocharger, MGU-K, for kinetic recovery, MGU-H for heat recovery, energy storage, and control electronics into one system. The complexity was huge. These were essentially racing cars with spacecraft technology. One team had prepared better than anyone else: Mercedes. Their power unit advantage was estimated at over 50 horsepower in 2014, an eternity in Formula One terms. This was a strategic masterstroke years in the making. Mercedes had restructured their entire technical team around the 2014 regulations. The results were devastating for the competition. From early 2014, Mercedes cars consistently crossed the finish line 20 to 30 seconds ahead of their nearest rivals, a gap not seen since the height of Ferrari's dominance. Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg, the Mercedes drivers, were essentially racing only each other. Hamilton emerged victorious in 2014 and 2015, but his rivalry with Rosberg intensified to breaking point. Their on-track collisions at Spain and Austria in 2016 culminated in Rosberg narrowly winning the championship before announcing his immediate retirement, the only champion in F1 history to quit after winning a title. Mercedes simply plugged in Finnish driver Valtteri Bottas alongside Hamilton and continued their dominance. In 2017, regulations introduced wider cars and tyres with increased downforce, creating the fastest F1 cars ever built. Yet Mercedes adapted to each regulatory change, winning 7 consecutive Constructors' Championships from 2014 to 2020. During this time, Hamilton won 6 drivers' titles. This brought his total to 7, matching Michael Schumacher's record, which many believed was unbeatable. Hamilton's statistical dominance became overwhelming. He beat Schumacher's 91 wins and later reached over 100 victories. This achievement felt impossible just a few years ago. By 2019, Red Bull Racing had partnered with Honda, and their power unit was finally approaching Mercedes' performance. Max Verstappen, the Dutch driver, is the main challenger to Hamilton's dominance. The 2021 season delivered the greatest championship duel in Formula One history. Verstappen and Hamilton were separated by narrow margins all season, with controversial collisions at Silverstone, Monza, and Jeddah increasing the tension. They arrived at the final race in Abu Dhabi incredibly tied on points. What followed was the most contentious finish in F1 history. Hamilton was in the lead, but then a late safety car changed everything. Race director Michael Massey made a surprising call on the rules and let Verstappen, who had fresh tyres, pass Hamilton on the last lap. A moment that shaped the championship showed that human choices still drive the story of Formula One, even with all the technology. After 7 years of Mercedes dominance, Formula One was about to enter a new era with the most comprehensive regulation changes in a generation. After 70 years of pushing technology to the limit, Formula One faced an uncomfortable truth. The sport had engineered itself into a corner. The complexity of the aerodynamics prevented cars from racing closely. The spending had spiraled so out of control that teams were going bankrupt. Something had to change. In 2022, Formula One's most comprehensive regulation reset arrived as a dual revolution, technical and financial, that would fundamentally transform how the sport operated. First, the tech revolution. Have a look at these eye-catching new cars. They have sleek, swept-back designs. After 4 decades, ground effect returned. But unlike the dangerous 1980s version, this was a sophisticated, controlled implementation. These cars use Venturi tunnels under them to direct air, creating downforce, so drivers can follow each other more easily, avoiding the dirty air that used to be a problem. Other technical changes were equally significant. The tiny 13-inch wheels that had been an F1 trademark for decades were replaced by larger 18-inch wheels with low-profile tyres, bringing F1 closer to modern road car technology. The cars now run on E10 fuel with 10% sustainable ethanol, the first step in Formula One's commitment to become carbon neutral by 2030. But perhaps more revolutionary was the financial regulation. Formula One implemented its first ever cost cap. Teams could now spend no more than $145 million per year on performance, what later reduced further, with exclusions for driver salaries and marketing. This was a philosophical transformation of the sport. For decades, Formula One's ethos had been simple: spend whatever it takes to win. Now, engineering efficiency became as important as engineering excellence. The sport's biggest teams had to lay off staff, while smaller teams gained hope they could compete on a more level playing field. But Red Bull Racing and Max Verstappen kept their strong lead in this new era. Verstappen's 2022 season was record-breaking, winning 15 of 22 races. In 2023, he went even further, winning an unprecedented 19 races. But by 2024, the cost cap's effects began showing. McLaren, after years in the wilderness, emerged as serious challengers, with British driver Lando Norris challenging Verstappen. And Ferrari and Mercedes closed the gap. The stable regulations helped their performance become more similar. As Formula One celebrates its 75th anniversary in 2025, the sport has never been healthier. Global viewership is at an all-time high, partly thanks to Netflix's Drive to Survive series, introducing the sport to new audiences. Racing is getting tighter, team sustainability is getting better, and tech innovation is moving forward in a more controlled way. Looking ahead, 2026 will bring another significant change: new power unit regulations focusing on increased electrical power and 100% sustainable fuels. Honda will return officially after previously powering Red Bull. Starting their 5th era in the sport shows F1's ongoing tech relevance. What began as European aristocrats racing primitive machines on dusty roads has evolved into a global tech arena where every millisecond counts. If you've enjoyed this journey, there's plenty more to come. This sport never stops evolving, and neither will our content. I would appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.